Yo, what's up, guys? So let's go over the buffs and the nerfs on the Rogue in Season 3. There are some heavy changes. So, starting right off, there are going to be some new items. I'm going to go over these briefly, really quick, which are going to be the Beastfall boots as well as the new Salient aspect. So, starting right off, the new Beastfall boots, we don't know the full stats of them. So, if they don't roll, like, let's say, movement speed, then these things are just in the trash immediately. But they do have a pretty cool thing where when you cast an ultimate skill, our next core skill consumes all of our energy and deals a extra set of bonus damage based on the amount that it's consuming. In addition to that, using any cooldown just restores 5 energy. So I'm mainly looking at just this, but the rest of the stats are not bad at all. Especially when you consider running any trap build, you can actually spam on the traps pretty hard depending on what passive that you take. And I want to say in Season 3, most players will probably want to play a bow rogue. Rogue bow is going to be on top as there's heavy nerfs to specifically twisting blades, as well as anything that just kind of played hybrid because everyone and their grandmother played close quarters combat, but it is heavily nerfed. Some of the stats, by the way, that you see in any of the Diablo websites, including the one we're about to look at, some of them may not all be adjusted. So if I mouse over them and they say certain things, because we're going to use it kind of as a reference for this video, they're not all updated perfectly yet. So as far as this goes, this could be actually a pretty good item for Season 3. And this is applied to all rogues, melee and range. But Season 3 is mainly going to be a ranged rogue builds. Next up, we have the Sans aspect. So if you use concealment, you're able to gain extra resistances, and it's maximum resistances, and it's actually pretty good. So maybe for some special like bosses, this could be kind of good, but just for open world content, considering we don't have the Abattoir of Zir, I don't know if we're going to need to scale defenses in this category that high, but it's a nice little other defensive thing. And there is another aspect in the game that I think a lot of players will be excited about, and this is a generic one. It's not just for Rogue. It reduces your evade cooldown, but gives you more armor. So I think a lot of people probably opt to play that instead of disobedience, since it doesn't have to ramp up. Now, on top of that, Blade Shift got buffed. This one can actually give you additional movement speed as well as resistances. So Blade Shift was already pretty good. The damage doesn't really matter. It's a basic skill. The duration increase, that's going to be nice. Fundamental Invigorating Strike now gives you a higher chance to activate it. It's kind of like a whatever, I would say. Enhanced Caltrops. So previously you made it so the enemies would take 5x increased damage and it would ramp up. Now it's immediately 10x and then it ramps up. So up to Caltrops, but unfortunately because of the animation, I would say most players will probably not be interested in running this unless we get Abattoir of Zir, which was already confirmed to not come in. However, there is going to be something else that comes out maybe towards the middle of the season in the Gauntlet. Maybe players will consider it, but the animation is just too slow on that. Next up, Rain of Arrows. So got a buff, the cast timer is reduced, and the first wave is actually going to be closer. So overall, in most circumstances, this will be a buff. Cold Imbuement actually got a double buff, so the chill amount per rank is going to be increased. So if you get plus ranked skills, expect to see things a lot more frozen if you are playing Cold Imbuement. Now with the blended Cold Imbuement, they're going to remove the crit strike requirement and increase the lucky hit chance from 20 to 35, so that's overall going to be a buff. Then there's the mixed poison imbuement, which is actually pretty good. So its previous one was the lucky hit poison imbued skills had a chance to deal double the amount of poison damage. Now the poison imbued skills have a 30% chance to reduce poison imbuement's cooldown. So this is going to be great for players that like to run the aspect for the puncture to give you the poison imbue and then just reduces the cooldown because it's just poison imbued skills. So that's pretty awesome. Next up, though, with Forceful Arrow, the vulnerable duration got increased by 2 seconds. It's a nice buff, but at the end of the day, people just play puncture, right? Next up with Enhanced Penetrating Shot. So this one's actually quite interesting, as when I was reading this, I'm like, because I played this in like the last 2 seasons, Pen Shot was one of my favorites. It's basically kind of like the same. They kind of flip-flop some of the stuff over here. So before, most people will get Enhanced, which basically gives you a 10% and then an additional 10% if it hits 3 enemies. And then you get improved, so it does x10 per enemy that it hits. No one really got this one that like knocked down things, but now what it does is they flip-flopped the order in them so you can still not get the advanced penetrating shot. So it doesn't really matter. It's pretty much the exact same thing. So now it's 10-10 over here, and then the other bonus over here is that now you get 10 improved. So improved over here gives you the x10 per enemy that is actually hit. So it basically, I would say, doesn't matter that much overall. Pen Shot is still going to be one of my favorites, and I'll still probably play it going to the next season if I was to play Rogue. Now, here's where Rogue gets heavy nerfs to the bonuses in close quarters combat. Everyone ran close quarters because it was by far the best. Now they've changed it from 40% to 10%. That is massive, but don't worry. There's something else that we're going to step in. It's going to be way better. But they did give us a little bit of buffs for the attack speed increase per stack, and you get 2 stacks. So buff over there for close quarters combat. This is the one that everyone got. Next up, though, on precision, the previous crit strike with marksman skills granted us precision, and we would gain 4x% crit strike damage per stack. Then it would like expend the amount. Now, the important part isn't really here. It's mainly over here with precision. So what's changed over here, you now gain 1 stack of precision, or 2 if it critically strikes. When you reach 6, our next marksman core, this is important because before you would expend it on whatever like thing and you'd have to count it manually, and it's not fun. So now it's basically a lot more fluid for anyone that's interested in playing it. It's going to be a lot easier. And then it's going to give you that guaranteed crit and deal 50x increased crit strike damage, and it's going to consume all stacks. This damage is further increased by equal amount of to x15 of a crit strike damage bonus. So no longer do we stack damage versus crowd control. Now we stack crit strike damage, which is interesting because now we're going back into season and season 0 for stats on what we're trying to go for. So we want crit strike damage all over again. But it's basically bow season because, I mean, this is such a heavy nerf. So overall, nerfs to pretty much all non-bow builds because every bow build will just play precision now. And the non-ones, I'm sorry, Twisting Blade's getting another nerf here. So Chilling Weight, the previous one had their movement speed reduced, and then now it's going to have their effect reduced, and you're going to gain increased chill effect, so things are going to be a lot more frozen. And with concussive over here, which was the thing that knocked down, this is a buff, especially to Wind Force. So how it used to work is if you knock down the enemy, you gain increased crit strike chance, and if you go to 3, you get like 15, okay? Or what is it, 12 actually, because it got nerfed. So it used to be 15, so if you put 3 points into it, you get 12% increased crit strike chance against them. Now the new effect is you just gain crit strike chance. Now, does that mean if I hit like 10 enemies, right, I would get 120% crit strike chance? I don't know. Even if it's just flat 12, if you just knock down things, I think that that's going to be a very nice change at the end of the day. So that's great. So that's going to be a buff. Then with the Paragon over here later on as Instinct, this thing was useless because it got nerfed because you used to be able to keep up Inner Sight 100% of the time. Now, it did get changed, and you can no longer do that because Inner Sight now has an internal cooldown. And the new effect is when Inner Sight becomes full, you gain 100% chance to dodge for 2 seconds, and then our next 3 core skills deal additional damage equal to 20x of your core skill damage bonus. So you might be able to think about considering scaling this as well, but at that point you're playing Inner Sight, and preparation is pretty good with the brand new boots as well. And then here's where we get to the nerfs. So Blade Dancers, that's the little spinning blades, 4 twisting blades, that got nerfed. They also mentioned that they were supposed to nerf the twisting blades poison in here as well, but basically it's nerfed. It's a 33% damage reduction over there on the spinning part though. And then used to have like some bonuses based on the distance, but that no longer applies. It's just a different number. So technically you could argue it's a buff and a nerf, but it's definitely just a nerf. Summon Vigor is kind of cool over here if you are running the momentum key passive, but everyone's going to be playing precision, so this is almost irrelevant. But if you can stack it 3 times, 15% DR on top of the flat 20% that it gives you is 35% damage reduction. So if you need survivability, momentum key passive is going to be your friend. Next up with the Icy Alchemist. So how this worked is when you would chill an enemy, you would then, if you did shadow damage, it would pop and deal a bunch of damage, and then it would chill them. The new effect is now that it does chill them, and then it explodes for same amount of damage. You can see the numbers are the same, but if they're already chilled or frozen, you get to do 100x damage. That's insane. So maybe Shadow Cold, someone will make something cool, but more likely people will just use the poison one, because if the enemy is already poisoned, you get to do 100x damage, and this got increased over here by 50% of the damage at the higher end. So it's pretty good, I would say. On top of getting that and then doubling that, it's good. Wind Force. I was excited to hear their buffs, and the buffs are kind of mid. It's more so that key passive that I was talking about, where anything that gets knocked down, you get that increased crit, because what normally you would have to do is apply daze to the target, and then daze knocks down the targets when you hit a dazed enemy on a crit or something like that. So it does save you an aspect if you want to play Wind Force, because they've increased that lucky hit chance. Think of this kind of like in PoE, when you would have chance to deal double damage, because that's kind of what Wind Force does. So instead of it being 15 at the highest end, it's now 20, because if we look at the highest end of a lucky hit chance proc at 50%, that's kind of the numerical stats that we're looking, because it's an on-chance lucky hit thing. So I still don't really like the lucky hit on like a lot of just things in general in Diablo 4. I'm gonna be honest. I would wish it was just chance to have this happen, not percent chance on lucky hit on damage on Tuesdays. You know, that's the meme, right? Anyways, next up, Sky Hunter. This is gonna be pretty insane. This is probably gonna be one of the better unique bows if you're interested in playing with a bow build. So they changed the implicit on it to crit strike damage, and then they've increased it by 100%. That's awesome. They also updated the things to adjust to the precision key passive. So the previous one doesn't really matter too much except for the last line where it can only happen once per cast. The new effect is the first time that you deal damage to enemy, it's a guaranteed crit, which was the same. When you consume a precision casting skill, it grants you up to X30 increased crit strike damage, and we gain energy, and that's not a once per cast. So, man, that is a broad rapid fire. Just gives you full energy, and then you expend all of it with the new boots, right? And you can do all that damage. I think this could be kind of cool, maybe with some, you know, bow builds, even using maybe the ultimate bow build with the Ward of Hakan. Maybe Rain of Arrows could be kind of fun to mess around with, and that way you have something to use in between when your energy is kind of regenerating. And then we have Eagle Horn. I want to say overall this is a nerf because I actually really liked Eagle Horn. I thought it was like better before. So it used to have basically up to an 80% chance to have the arrow bounce off. That arrow that bounces off can bounce 5 times. And then now when you damage 5 enemies with it, it will cause the next one to apply vulnerability. This didn't really matter. Now it makes them all vulnerable. So you think, oh, that's a buff, right? But every fourth cast bounces off of walls. So you went from potentially 80% to a 25%. Now there is a buff here where it does bonus damage, but I like the consistency. If you happen to get really lucky and you play 30 hours a day like me, and you get like a very high roll, then it was better. But overall, maybe kind of a buff if you had a really bad rolled one. But I'd say most people just play Sky Hunter. You have basically that extra precision key passive that gives you bonus crit. And on top of this, this gets increased by 100%. It's like a no-brainer. Sky Hunter on top right now. And those are the changes for the row. Let me know, guys, what you think of them. Are you happy about the nerfs? Are you upset about the nerfs? Basically, what it comes down to is Twisting Blades nerfed and ranged bow builds will be a lot better. If you're wondering what I plan to play, I plan to play exactly what I was playing last season. If I was to play Rogue, I'm still debating on what we are going to be playing, but I think Pen Shot will be very, very strong, or even let's say Rapid Fire. Basically, if you want to play Twisting Blades, is it dead and like completely worthless? No, but it's not nearly as good as it once was. But that's my thoughts on it. You guys can let me know your thoughts down below. But that's going to wrap things up, and we'll be covering more classes, so don't miss out on them. So if you want to see it, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and you'll see more very soon. Drop a like on your way out, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.